A quartet of criminals are seated in their vehicle, indulging in illicit substances while they await their next victim. One of them comforts the others, stating confidently that their next target is wealthy. At that moment, a young woman steps out of a building to drop off cash at the bank. They eventually catch up to her at the road's end and forcibly remove her from the vehicle. One of the criminals rummages through the car for cash but discovers nothing. Out of nowhere, an elderly couple, George and Sandra, are passing by and halt at the scene. The criminals threaten to harm George, one of whom strikes him with a baseball bat. However, George retaliates, striking the assailant, causing his head to crack open. He then confronts the others, asking them to leave. The police soon arrive on the scene. In his statement to the officers, George explains that he only intended to apprehend the criminal, not cause his death. Chief Inspector Holland, with a sarcastic tone, he then handcuffs George under suspicion of murder. Toward the end of the day, the last three criminals approach their leader, Warren, telling him that their heist didn't go as smoothly as they hoped. Upon asking about his brother, Warren is taken aback by the news of his demise. Fueled by grief over his brother's death, Warren commands the criminals to stay away until George is brought to justice. After George is set free on bail and returns to his home, the criminals, including Warren, track him down and ring his doorbell. While the other two criminals encircle the house from behind, one of them reveals his plan to attack George's wife. George is held against a wall with a knife lodged in his mouth, as the criminal who had threatened him earlier mocks him for acting like a hero that day. The criminals then bind the couple to chairs in the garage and spray them with gasoline. As the couple cries out in terror, Warren sets the room on fire, incinerating them. In the following scene, we see a plane landing on the runway. The scene then transitions to a car, where the main character, Jimmy Vickers, a special operations interrogation officer, is listening to a message from his mother. The man seems to be in a state of deep sorrow as he makes his way home. Jimmy goes to a pub. There, he confronts the proprietors, Debs and Terry, regarding the incident. Terry claims he doesn't know anything, but Jimmy points out that Terry's residence is only 50 yards from his parents' home, close enough to have heard their cries. Jimmy grabs Terry by the neck and starts a fight. Debs steps in and asks Terry to share what he knows. In the end, Terry confesses that he made a call to the fire department that evening and mentions seeing 4 gang members. They invaded the house, and he heard Jimmy's father yelling, but due to fear, he didn't step in and only observed from his window. And later, we see Jimmy at the charred remains of his parents' garage. Jimmy's friend in the police force, Griffin, tells him that a neighbor reported seeing a black BMW racing through the area at 11 p.m. that night, but they were unable to capture the license plate. Griffin suspects that the gang involved in a dispute with George might be behind his murder, but the police lack any proof. Jimmy exits the garage, his eyes filled with tears. The following day, Jimmy visits his parents' burial site. During his time at the cemetery, his wife, Morgan, arrives. It's here that we discover that Jimmy and Morgan were on the verge of separating before this unfortunate event took place. Morgan reveals that she had sent him 5 letters, yet he failed to attend the funeral. Nonetheless, recognizing Jimmy's struggle, she offers him comfort, assuring him that he's not alone and that he's welcome to visit her whenever he wishes. The following morning, Griffin sets up a meeting with Jimmy and tells him that the black BMW is owned by Warren, who, as the investigation suggests, is the brother of the individual George unintentionally killed that day. He then presents Jimmy with the CCTV footage of the theft. That night, as Warren exits the gym, his vehicle is struck from behind. He emerges from the car to find Jimmy waiting for him, prepared to face him. With his background in special forces, Jimmy easily subdues Warren. Upon waking up, Warren finds himself bound to the front seat, soaked in gasoline by Jimmy. Jimmy brings up the memory of the old couple he killed 2 weeks back. Warren, filled with anger, argues that he acted correctly and shows no regret for his deeds. Maintaining his composure, Jimmy compels Warren to reveal the names of his gang members, offering to release him in exchange. Once Warren jots down the names, Jimmy lights up a cigarette. Later, he goes to Morgan's residence, but his injuries make it difficult for him to speak. Morgan senses something is amiss, noticing the blood on his shirt. She invites him in, where she tends to his injuries. Despite the couple's impending divorce, this incident strengthens their bond, prompting Jimmy to spend more time at Morgan's place. That night, Griffin meets with Jimmy and warns him against taking justice into his own hands. However, Jimmy believes that the corrupt system is incapable of stopping these criminals who have managed to control nearly every family in the town. They only gather evidence and handle it while the criminals laugh at them and spit on them. Griffin then arrives at a scene of a murder that occurred during a robbery. It's there that Griffin truly sees the shortcomings of the police force as DCI Holland brushes off the robbery and the victim, openly saying that the shopkeeper deserved it. When Griffin, clearly angry, argues that the man was defending his business, Holland suggests he take some cold medicine. At the same time, Jimmy is on a mission and sets his sights on the next member of the gang, Ryan. He takes him to a deserted location, ties him to a chair, and locks his mouth shut, knowing the various forms of torture that any special forces interrogator might use. Jimmy starts his quest for revenge by pouring cement down Ryan's throat, causing him to choke to death. The next day, the police find Ryan's body completely encased in cement. DCI Holland is intrigued by this, thinking it could lead to a good career move. Later, the bar owner Terry shows DCI Holland the CCTV footage from his bar, where they see Jimmy dragging an unconscious man into the back of his car. Consequently, the police began to interrogate Morgan about Jimmy, and she fibbed while Jimmy took refuge in her apartment. Subsequently, at a marketplace, 2 police officers began to shadow Jimmy, moments before they were about to apprehend him. However, a car suddenly appeared, and 2 intimidating men got out, overpowering the officers and allowing Jimmy to flee with them. At this point, Jimmy was taken aback to see Colonel Leach step out of the car, as he was a key asset to the Special Forces, who had personally tasked him with his return. He was given 48 hours to rectify his situation, which entailed getting rid of the remaining gang members before he was to resume his duties. Meanwhile, Griffin approached his team leader, SWAT team leader Joe, expressing his concerns about the case. Noting that something seemed off, Joe, picking up on Griffin's unease, inquired if he knew the identity of the killer. Griffin then disclosed the shocking truth that he was actually Jimmy's friend, and Jimmy's parents had been brutally killed. At the same time, Jimmy embarks on his quest for revenge, confident that he has the support of the army and will evade capture. While Leon is at a strip club, he is approached by an envelope with pictures of the deceased Ryan. Realizing he's in danger, the criminal escapes the club, only to be hit by Jimmy. Upon waking up, Leon finds himself immobilized, with his lower half bound to a gate and his upper half secured to a vehicle. Leon, puzzled as to the reason for his torment, only incites Jimmy's wrath. Consequently, Jimmy shows no compassion. He enters the vehicle and accelerates, tearing Leon's body apart. The following day, Colonel Leach has a meeting with DCI Holland at a restaurant. He insists that Holland surrender all the evidence the police have on Jimmy, claiming that Jimmy is under military jurisdiction, not his. In response, Holland stands his ground, arguing that if the colonel were in control of the legal system, he should be imprisoned. He stated that individuals like Jimmy are not afraid of dying. Holland embraces the task and announces his determination to locate Jimmy. The colonel departs, cautioning Holland that any attempt to engage with Jimmy will result in severe consequences. In the subsequent scene, we observe the superintendent and police chief conversing with the army's leader in a short meeting. The army leader directly addresses the superintendent, stating that Jimmy, the focus of the current inquiry, must not be held without cause and that revealing too much about him is unacceptable. The officers have conveyed to their superiors the importance of Jimmy to Britain's most confidential operations. The military's command insists that the police report directly to them regarding the investigation's progress. That evening, the sole survivor of the gang, Rob, who was involved in the murder of Jimmy's parents, is taken outside by some drug dealers. Jimmy uses him as protection, compelling him to ring the doorbell. Jimmy eliminates all the other drug dealers except for Warren's associate, Caleb. Jimmy binds Caleb to a chair and begins to combine chemicals in a barrel, the same substances the dealers use to produce their drugs. Subsequently, Jimmy dissolves all the money in the barrel before pouring the acidic solution over Caleb's head, dissolving him completely. At the same time, DCI Holland discovers that Officer Griffin has been leaking information to Jimmy from the beginning, so he confronts him about who his next target could be. Griffin, however, won't disclose the information and insists that Holland keep his distance from Jimmy. Yet, Holland appears determined to pursue Jimmy and goes against his superior's directives. Holland then locates the final member of the gang who had fled from the hospital the previous night. The injured individual is observed going through some documents in Jimmy's apartment. Shortly after, Jimmy catches up with him and convinces him to take him to the harbor. He makes the individual submissive, ties his hands, and reveals a syringe stating that it contains the most lethal inhalant that will incinerate someone from the inside. Rob spits in Jimmy's face and instructs him to inspect the trunk of his car, leaving Jimmy in utter shock to discover that Rob had previously murdered Morgan before Jimmy had the chance to do so. When the SWAT team, led by Holland, arrives at the scene, Jimmy, in disbelief and drained, fires all the bullets from his gun at Rob. At the same time, Griffin shows up and challenges Holland regarding his decision to release Rob from the hospital, which results in Morgan's demise. Holland claims he let him go to lead them to Jimmy, unaware of the consequences. Realizing the gravity of the situation, SWAT team leader Joe commands his team to halt their operations. They permit the injured Jimmy to depart, with Holland attempting to intervene. Jimmy delivers a powerful punch to Holland, effectively halting his advances. The film concludes in a tight alley where a random girl is disposing of trash. As she cries out for assistance, at the far end of the alley, Jimmy emerges, and the movie ends.